Hi Year 11 and welcome to English in 10, and today we're talking about the importance of the ending of the play and Inspector Calls. So you might have a question which may not necessarily be about a theme or a character, but it might actually talk about a specific point in the play and its relevance in terms of how it might impact upon the play as a whole, the audience, or the message that the writer is trying to put across. Now, of course, the ending to Inspector Calls is pretty controversial. Who was the inspector? Was he real? Was he not? Is there some kind of conspiracy? Was he a ghost? So many questions are left very much unanswered. But is it really about the inspector that we're focusing on? No, really, Priestley wants to focus on the family, their reaction to the death of this young woman, and then the realisation that actually they're going to have to go through the same thing again, but with the knowledge that they all know what each other's role was in this young woman's life, and of course her death. Let's have a look at the very first section actually to think about for your own response. So number one, the structure of the play. So the play ends with this quotation, with Burling saying, "That was the police. A girl has just died on her way to the infirmary after swallowing some disinfectant, and a police inspector is on his way here to ask some questions." As they stare guiltily and dumbfounded, the curtain falls. All right, so if you think about the structure of the play as a whole, Priestley actually ends each act on a cliffhanger. If you think about here, each one ends. The first one ends with Sheila very aware of Gerald's involvement with Eva/Daisy. The second one ends with, of course, Eric walking in and them all realising his role, and of course then the ending of Act 3. So you've got very much that cliffhanger device used throughout, which of course the play itself ends on essentially. But you've also got the cyclical plot of it. The family have gone through this whole emotional roller coaster of discovering their role in a young woman's suicide, and importantly everybody else in the family's role, and the realisation that they are not the good family they all thought they were. They didn't have the good engagement, they don't have the good reputation any longer, they don't have the good intentions, and they definitely aren't the moral people they've let other people believe they are, only to realise they're going to have to go through all of that again. And it's almost like a sense of having this replaying of the situation. However, the important thing is now they have the chance to do it differently. They all know their role in the play, but here now the Burlings and Gerald are able to act differently if they choose to. Do they choose to perhaps immediately confess their role to the inspector as they arrive? Do they perhaps play dumb? Do they try and defend one another? What might they do? So you've got Priestley saying, we have got the chance to learn from mistakes, but also to move forward. But in this or we could be trapped in making the same mistakes again and again and again. Okay, looking at my next point with you, and that is the three climaxes. So the play ends of almost three shocking moments. So climax number one is the inspector's long speech, which he ends with "good night" and then walks out, which leads you to think, that's the end of the play. Okay, great. But then no, it's not the end of the play, because then it's the fact that he's a fake inspector apparently, with us being told that man wasn't a police officer. And of course the kind of shock for the audience of, that really wasn't the climax. Okay, now this must be the climax. It was all fake, and actually they were completely had by someone, only for the realisation of what is to come as they stare guiltily at one another. So with our first climax, the inspector leaves nothing unsaid. He is forcible, he is aggressive, he is very judgmental, and he condemns them. He condemns every single one of the family members, even though he acknowledges that Eric and Sheila are going to learn from their mistakes. They wouldn't be the people they have been. He does very much condemn them. And he's saying, if you don't learn from this, he uses very apocalyptic point from the Bible there in Book of Revelations, the apocalypse. He uses apocalyptic imagery, in particular his fire and anguish. If you're not sure anything about the Book of Revelations from the Bible, I would definitely recommend you go and revise that to understand what he's talking about here. But he's talking about like the end of the world. So he's saying you've got to learn. Think about when this has actually just been set, and think about when it's written. This is just post World War II. What must have felt like an absolute apocalypse in some manners. So you've got a real link there to what's happening at the time period. Then you've got here with climax number 2, Their true nature is revealed when they believe they have got away with it, showing actually how repugnant they are. It's actually, I think even Sheila and Eric are quite disgusted by their family and Gerald's behaviour when they're almost very triumphant and joyful in their sense of, oh yes, we've managed to get away with perhaps having our whole lives in tatters. And the audience themselves are angry and felt that they actually are quite angry as well because they don't see the family being punished the way they really should be. Only for the final climax, in fact, the audience are the ones who are satisfied. They know that Eva will indeed have the justice that she deserves. So you've got a real sense of that roller coaster of emotions, those three key moments. And that's why the ending there is quite so shocking itself. Okay, next one here is this. The impact on the audience and the characters. We see that last section of the play in which you have that shocking realisation that actually, no, they're not going to get away with it. The audience are shocked after having two fake climaxes. But think about the sense of what's happening here. We're shocked as are the characters. There was a massively false sense of security. We all thought it was over on two points, only to discover it wasn't. And although you don't get marks for explicitly talking about the contextual element of the time period, I would definitely think about the fact this is just post World War II, where there'd be this sense of, is it over, is it over, is it over? Actually, it isn't. And all the way throughout this play, we have felt like we're the ones who know more than the Burlings. And we can guess who perhaps is involved or what's happening. And we knew it was Eric pretty early on. We knew that Gerald clearly had an affair. Like, we sort of had the entire play feeling quite smug in our sense of knowing, in comparison to Mr. Burling in Act 1, who didn't know anything. He thought that the Titanic was going to be fine. He thought there was never going to be war. We had that real sort of comfortable sense all the way up throughout the play of feeling that we knew more than the cast themselves did, the characters did, only to have that sort of swept away from underneath us right at the end. So is Priestley perhaps trying to criticise the audience a bit? Like, don't think you're above the Burlings. You could easily be just like them. You could act like them. You could have the same situation. If you're someone who's rich or a business owner like Mr. Burling, are you perhaps acting like him? Do you think you're like the great charitable woman like Mrs. Burling, but actually you're more like Mrs. Actual Burling, the one that we really know of? So do bear that one in mind too. Okay, so your task now. So I'm going to ask you to spend 30 to 40 minutes thinking about the importance of the ending of the play. Now, you don't get marked explicitly for a contextual reading, but don't feel that you can't refer to the fact that it's set in World War I and the impact of the war on the consciousness of the audience and the fact that they are a post-World War II audience. That's absolutely relevant if you're talking about the impact on the audience. I think that'd be absolutely fine. Don't repeat yourself. So don't keep telling me it's a shocking ending, it's a shocking ending, it's a shocking ending. You can say it once. Don't keep telling me the same thing at all. And think about the message and the intent by the writer. What is Priestley's message here? What is his motivation as a writer? Okay, year 11, best of luck. After you and your active revision.